We're very pleased to be here for the valedictory session, the other high point of this day today on 5G. And we are having a galaxy of excellent experts with us, and presided over by no other than Shri UK Srivatsav, who is Senior DDG, Telecom Engineering Center, and head of TEC, the same. We are lucky to have him today to chair this session. He is a distinguished officer of the ITS with about 36 or 37 years of experience, I think 1983 batch. And he has had excellent, rich experience in all aspects of telecom technology, and worked heavily in the standardization area, not only in TEC in his earlier stint, as well as with ITU, where he has served several years even as vice chair of an important study group. So he is a great person to have for this evening. And prior to his current appointment in TEC, he was principal advisor in Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, in charge of networks, spectrum, and licensing, and had excellent contributions done there during his tenure, including the 5G area. So we are fortunate to have him, and I have pleasure in now handing over to him to chair the session. And sir, would you be comfortable introducing the other panelists, or would you want me to do that?
I'll do it, there's no problem. They are all my friends. I know Mr. Kishore Babu is my friend.
Great. I think Mr. C.S. Rao is unable to join, so he won't be there, but others are here.
All right.
One request also that my friend Randeep has got to rush somewhere to catch something, and he requests that...
We'll start with Randeep?
Yeah.
Why not?
Apologies to Kishore ji.
Okay, should we?
Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ramchandran. Thank you, Mr. Shashidharan, Mr. Kishore Babu, my colleague in the Department of Telecommunication. Mr. Alain Durand is Principal Technologist ICANN. Also, Mr. Randeep Khurana, Chief Technology Officer, Nokia. And good evening, all the delegates, ladies and gentlemen, attending this webinar. It's my real pleasure really to speak in this event and chair the session on 5G. As you all know, that 5G is expected to connect people, things, data, applications, transport systems, and cities in a smart network communication environment. It will transport a huge amount of data, much faster, reliably, connect an extremely large number of devices, and process very high volumes of data with minimum delay. All these things that attract the attention of Broadband India Forum and Mr. T.V. Ramchandran. And the 5G technologies are expected to support applications such as smart homes and buildings, smart cities, 3D video, work and play, cloud, remote medical services, virtual and augmented reality, and massive machine-to-machine communications for industry automation. You know, the 3G and 4G networks currently face challenges in supporting these services. Now, these new functionalities and new services necessitate a new way of deploying advanced mobile services, as well as new approaches in making 5G technology work together in industrial setting, by machine-to-machine communications, IoT, or with connected vehicles. All of you know that WRC has pointed out that ultra-low latency and very high bitrate applications of IoT will require larger contiguous blocks of spectrum than those that were available previously for 3G and 4G. And accordingly, all the administrations are wishing to implement IMT. And, they are moving for millimeter wave technology. NI too has done a wonderful job during the WRC 2019. They have made available a lot of bands for 5G applications. Now, we would like to hear from these issues from our panelists. There are a few more details that I'd like to share with you. But as per the GSMA, annual average in 5G millimeter wave contribution to GDP in 2034 for APT region is around 60%, and this is really remarkable if it comes true. Now personal lives, there are several use cases which are likely to be chief beneficiaries of 5G, and it will generate more value. These use cases will require a large amount of data throughput in a small coverage area. Our scarcity of spectrum in lower frequency bands. So the millimeter wave that have enormous amount of bandwidth solve this issue. The latest estimate for 5G networks in India from GSMA states that it has potential to transform industrial sectors and deliver significant social and economic benefits in India. Over the period 2023 and 2040, GSMA forecasts that 5G technologies will make an overall contribution of approximately $450 billion to the Indian economy, which will be 0.6% of GDP by 2040. This is the report that GSMA released a couple of days back, and I was present in that function. The manufacturing sector is set to benefit the most from 5G applications, accounting for 20% of the total benefit that will accrue out of the 5G technologies, followed by retail sector, which will get around 12% of benefit, and ICT will benefit by 11%. So the use of 5G technologies is very vital. The use of millimeter wave in this 5G technology is very vital, and I hope that all these issues related to spectrum bands, etc., are sorted out in this country, so that we start witnessing the benefits of 5G technologies sooner than later. So with this, I will close my address because there are eminent speakers who are going to introduce us to the topic and take us to various issues that are involved in this. I will therefore invite my esteemed fellow panelists to share their views. We will perhaps start with our friend, Mr. Randeep Rana. Mr. Rana is Chief Technology Officer, Nokia India, a technology and business leader with more than 23 years of experience. He heads the technology strategy and direction for Nokia in India, and alumnus of IT Delhi. Prior to joining Nokia, Randeep has held various middle to senior level positions at Motorola India. So quite an experienced gentleman. Welcome, Mr. Rana, to make a presentation. My request to all my fellow panelists is that please take 10 minutes to complete your talk, so that towards the end we can take few questions possibly. Thank you. Mr. Rana, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Session Chair Shri Srivastavji. Thank you, TV Ramachandran, for hosting this virtual event on digital transformation with 5G, a very apt theme for the conference. And thank you, Shishidharan, for being the host and the partner for this event together with Broadband India Forum. My dear fellow panelist, Shri Kishore Babu, Ellen, and it's indeed a pleasure to be part of this illustrious panel and talk about how I feel about 5G and what kind of transformation we see it will bring to the Indian marketplace. So I have few slides to share, which will be more about my views on how 5G is going to transform the whole industry and the society at large. And give me a couple of seconds to just flash my presentation, please. So is it visible?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Starting.
Yeah. Starting. Okay.
Yeah. It is.
Is it?
Now.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think the theme of my presentation is, in line with the conference theme, which is digital transformation with 5G, but taking it a bit furthermore in terms of what it could deliver. And the thought that came to my mind was that it is something that will be extraordinary, and that's what we are seeing from the launches that have happened globally. That it's not just a technology per se, but it is opening up new plethora of opportunities which have been unexplored at this point in time, and hence the extraordinary word here. And I would want to refer the audience to the fact that while it may be a fifth generation for the humans, this incidentally is going to be the first generation for machines, which have been waiting for quite some time to be connected to the new layers or new modes of connectivity other than Wi-Fi or LAN or Ethernet, which is prevailing currently. So for humans, it may be a one more G for them, but for machines, it's going to be a totally new experience. And hence, I always call that 5G is the first G for the machines, and we will see much more evolution of those Gs as machines embrace this first generation for themselves and making it more efficient and productive going forward. I think that's the theme of my presentation for the next 10 minutes, and I'll talk about why I believe that 5G is going to be bringing this extraordinary change that is expected to take shape in the marketplaces globally. So first thing, why 5G? There's an inherent demand of additional layers of spectrum, and the need is coming primarily from the mobile data traffic and the devices that are connecting, exploding the internet potential that we have seen tremendous growth. But then when we look at certain parameters which is pertaining to the population or the devices per data in terms of the usage, and then the device consumption that will happen over a period of time per device, we do believe at a conservative level between 2019 to 2025, that exponential growth is going to be to the tune of 28% on a conservative level and to the tune of 82x at the disruptive levels. Now, these cannot be estimated, mathematically. It's a function of how the market drivers will be and what kind of use cases will come into the play. But Nokia's Bell Lab Consulting did this study, and they looked at what operators need to look at, and they will be caught up by these three whammies, which is the population that is increasing at 1.1x rate, and the device per data users, which is increasing at 1.5x rate. And then more importantly is the device usage per device, or the data usage per device, which is tremendously growing at 17x. That's something that the industry has to be considered in terms of what are they gearing up for. And when we look at the next 5 to 6 years window, we are looking at data going up to 70 exabytes or more, depending upon what kind of use cases will eventually flow through the pipe. But at a conservative level of 28x and at a disruptive or an aggressive scenario of 82x, this is the range that we are looking at in which the data will explode and grow. Incidentally, Nokia also did a Mbit survey, which is an annual feature that Nokia does in this market in India. We had seen that this exponential growth of data, while it may be still between the range of 28 to 82x, we have already witnessed a growth of 44x between 2018 and 2019. So that's the kind of market that we are sitting in, and that's the kind of market appetite that India has in terms of the potential, in terms of new devices that are coming to the users, and in terms of the mobile traffic that is getting generated in this marketplace. Imagine still maybe 40% of the subscriber base is not yet connected to the smartphones. And as they penetrate down to the next level of demography, you will see that 44% that we witnessed in 2018 to 2019 is going to increase significantly more as those users will have access to the smartphone, which is the powerful machine that everybody is now aspiring to have. And that's the kind of range that we are looking at in terms of the data explosion. Where will this come from? So it will come from people, it will come from devices, and it will come from entertainment, gaming, shopping, and accessing information. And then if you look at the top ones, which is more about the age bars, and we are seeing the Generation Z and the Generation X using it more. And more than that, we're also now seeing that millennial adults and middle-aged people are also now using it for their own benefit. And then will come the connected cars. And with this 28x to 82x, which is the growth that is expected to happen by 2025, there will be many things that will get connected to the networks. It's not just the devices or the feature phones or the smartphones, but large screen TVs, drone communication, wearables, and IoT devices are going to be fueling this growth, further from an adoption standpoint. And then you will have some of the use cases which are more pertaining to streaming, storing, computing, communication, and gaming. And we are seeing with the advent of 5G in some of the markets which are more advanced than India in terms of adoption at this point in time, most of these use cases are now quite possible with the 5G networks. And then will come the virtual reality or the augmented reality, which will further be needing more data, bandwidths, and will also fuel up the growth that we are expecting to happen by 2025. And when we have these parameters surrounding us, there are three options that probably operators will have to look at. So there are the business models will change, and the business models will move from, we will work into three, that operators who want to sweat the assets, they may be in that stay zone, and operators who want to expand their current business given the potential that 5G brings in. They have a potential to go beyond the current connectivity layers of LTE, which is limited to certain use cases, to more use cases, bringing in public safety, private LTE for ports, private LTE for airports, or fixed wireless access with LTE or IoT-based LTE as the next mode of evolution. And then there is a big scope for becoming truly transformal or transformational to the extent that they could become the digital service providers of the future. And that's where we see 5G playing a big and an important role. And that journey will start from the use cases, whether it comes with a fixed wireless access on 5G, or it comes with connected cars using 5G, or an virtual reality, or an Industry 4.0. So there are a whole host of use cases and applications which are waiting to be exploited from a potential standpoint, and operators and the whole ecosystem and the stakeholders have to really look at how to stay relevant in this game when everything else around us is changing, from being truly digital or being true transformative in nature. I always look at 5G from a network standpoint in terms of capabilities, is how that can be translated into the currencies. And when I mean currencies, it's more about the monetization, because no matter there are assets that will have to be built up, which will take certain OPEX and CAPEX, but then the realization is in the form of the future network currencies that I believe will happen through four key pillars, which will ride on the strengths and the capabilities that 5G brings in, whether it is giving the peak rates or the reliability or mobility or an efficiency of TCO in terms of better bits per second. So the key four pillars that I see from a network currency standpoint and the capabilities that can be powered by 5G is more about data consumption and the video consumption. So that's something that is inherent to 5G, and it has already triggered with 4G. The second one, which is more important, is service-based artificial intelligence and machine learning monetization avenues and mechanisms. And this will be on demand, and there will be a lot of efficiency that 5G will bring in through the advent of AI and ML capabilities being inbuilt into the network size. The third one is more about IoT, which is about connecting more machines. The density of the devices per square kilometer will be higher, and that can be accommodated with the 5G inherent capabilities. And last but not the least, we are always talking about Industry 4.0, where there is an inherent and a need for modernizing the assets that industries have to bring in more reliability, better efficiency, and better productivity. So that will be driven by the fourth pillar of network currency, which I believe is going to be more driven by industrial automation. And there will be use cases which will pan across all those four dimensions, whether it is a consumer-led business case or it becomes an enterprise-led monetization avenue. So these are the four future network currencies that I believe are going to be powered by 5G capabilities. And then 5G, it brings a leap. It's a giant leap in its own evolution, bringing in endless possibilities, whether it is in terms of packing more users into the same spectrum, or delivering better speeds or latencies, or delivering certain committed SLAs or KPIs to the enterprises, which is currently done on a best effort basis in 2G, 3G, or 4G. And then the expanse of the use cases that we will see, not just on a user or a consumer-led base, but then it moves into smart homes and variables and Industry 4.0 possibilities, and also drones and connected cars, which probably from an Indian standpoint may be a little too far into the horizon, but gaming, smart home, Industry 4.0, and IoT variables are something that is a low-hanging fruit and that can be exploited to a large extent with the advent of 5G. And I talked about 5G for humans and the first generation for machines. And there are certain use cases, whether you look at industry, is more about critical automation, which can be driven by collaborative robots or drones, or teleoperations, whether it is in a health segment or in the education segment, which will be more about video-based remote control, or connecting sensors and arrays into the industry, which will make it much more efficient, versus the consumer, which will be more related to more mobile broadband experience or a fixed wireless access or a gaming kind of a use case. And this advent or this change and transformation for the industries is going to be significant in terms of the use case, and 5G will trigger that big change and momentum into the industries. And that's why this is going to be the first generation for the machines and not the fifth one as it would be for the humans. In terms of market opportunities, if you look at global landscape today, typically we have 7 million base stations, on this planet serving 7 billion people. Imagine 2025, there are going to be almost 15 million industrial sites which are awaiting a newer and a better form of connectivity, whether it is factories, whether it is work sites, whether it is cities or health or transport or education. Talk about any segment. There is a potential, and the estimates that McKinsey has done, so between 20 to 2025, it's estimated to be in the order of maybe 3 to 5 trillion of worth of economy on a lower estimate, vis-a-vis almost 25 trillion at a higher estimate. And if we look at the segments where it will impact the most, it's going to be the factories of the future, it's going to be the work sites, and it's going to be smart transport and logistics and the cities of the future. And that's where there is a value creation for 5G to happen, while at a consumer level, it's going to be more of a traditional flat market with a little bit of growth, but the new avenues in terms of 5G value creation will be more towards the industries of the future. And then the significant thing that we have learned from the global networks is more about AR, VR capabilities, and that space is quite big. And IDC has done some survey that they are estimating that almost 10.5 billion of investments will happen in AR. And between 2019 to 23, it's going to be growing at a CAGR of 77%. And it will be truly a B2C and a B2B play, where there will be diverse and massive business opportunities which will pan out. And talk about any segment, whether it is gaming, manufacturing, aerospace, entertainment, or military, defense, education, health. So this opens up a new plethora of the way we will be operating and working going forward. And COVID has only, I must say, stimulated this space, and we will see that AR/VR will become one of the biggest use cases of 5G, in addition to the fixed wireless access and the enhanced mobile broadband opportunities. So these are something that I wanted to share with you, and this is something that is lying ahead of us in terms of the future. So the future of digital transformation is not just about a technology. It's not about 5G or it may be 6G in future, but it's all about how you plan for it, how you prepare for it. And the first thing that I have in my mind is that we need to be prepared for these big changes. When I mean about big changes, it's about the whole ecosystem, starting from the spectrum, which will be a raw material for 5G to happen, to a light touch regulatory environment, to the network evolutions that have to happen in this marketplace, to the use cases. And then the second important thing where we have to gear up as a market in India is to address the digital skills gaps that currently we may have, in terms of leaning more forward towards the capabilities that artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, will bring into this whole space. And that's something where the competence needs to be ramped up across the segments, across the layers of the society. And last but not the least is the opportunity itself, which is in present of us to the tune of almost 5 trillion to 25 trillion, depending upon what case we take. And there is a huge potential lying in the market, while the potential that I talked about is at a global level. But then if we focus back to India, it's going to be in a relatively larger size because of the demography and the kind of use cases that India demands for its own digital transformation. So last slide, we do believe that 5G will transform these human possibilities, and I talked about this bringing in a big industrial change, which not only will bring a change but also control the operations and also automate many facets of the industry that we operate in. And Nokia, incidentally, has a technology leadership, and it will ensure everything that 5G impacts from a network point of view, or a use case point of view, or the market potential that needs to be addressed. So join us on the journey to the new industrial revolution, and I believe 5G will be a catalyst and an enabler to make that change and address all the opportunities that are lying ahead of us. And as I said, I want to sum it again with the same message, that it may be perceived as a fifth generation for the humans, but then it is a first generation for the machines, and we certainly owe that kind of a technology enablement for the industries in order to be more relevant, more effective, more productive in the years or the time to come. I think that's end of my presentation. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Randeep, for a wonderful presentation, laced with so much of data. I mean, it was a little bit difficult to comprehend all at a time. I hope you share some of the details with Mr. T.V. Ramchandran so that we can also collect and have a look at it in more detail.
Absolutely, I will do that, sir.
And the tagline is wonderful. 5G is first T for machines. So I really feel very happy. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. May I now invite my friend Mr. Kishore Babu to make his presentation. I will introduce Mr. Babu. He has over 29 years of experience in public policy development in ICTs, development programs and projects of national significance. He has been responsible for active coordination with national organizations and industry, apart from various public sector engagements and standards functions. So in current position, he has been handling a lot of issues involving 5G and all the latest technologies for that matter. So welcome, Babu, and please make your presentation.
So thank you very much, sir. Thanks for the introduction, which is very generous. And I also want to thank all the seniors, Mr. Ramchandran, Shishidharan, and I should say technology advisor, Mr. Randeep, and all the people who are here. I also have few slides, just I'm sharing, kindly bear with me. So are you able to see the screen?
Yes, go ahead.
So thank you very much. And incidentally, myself and Randeep, we are coming to the issue from different directions. So perhaps the audience don't feel a kind of repetition from the issues what we are going to discuss. I saw the number of participants now. There are around 9 people. It's like more a warm evening discussion of a family to look at what are the challenges where we are going to leading in this journey of, let me call in Randeep Raina's words, fifth generation for people and first generation for machines. So I'm coming from not from technology. Randeep has very eloquently touched about technology and what 5G is capable of. I'm coming from the industry ecosystem in India, which is going to adopt or which is planning various experiments, as well as how they want to take it forward, 5G as a technology, a solution in various verticals. If you kindly look at the screen, this is a list or split of NASSCOM survey, where we are having around 9,000 startups, which are tech startups, I should say. You can look at the various verticals, starting from enterprise to agri-tech, and including HR, education, travel, and supply chain management, all the sectors where technology has got a very important role to play. They are looking at what is that 5G is going to do to us. Is it going to be different, and how it is going to alter the way we deliver the service, the way we do the platform innovation, and which is going to have impact, perhaps even not only optimization of receiver, not only optimization of resources, and also delivering new application solutions. There is a kind of expectation as well as optimism from industry verticals about what the 5G is going to do here. So I also looked at what is this, this India's tech industry, how they are using the deep technologies. When we hear about 5G, 5G is denoted as not only just one technology, but a blanket of, I should say, very bouquet of technologies, starting from various, I should say, bringing platforms as well as devices across the, different radio access technologies. It is bringing a lot of convergence. If that is so, what is the deep technologies where we say artificial intelligence, big data analytics, as well as the blockchain, AR, VR, drones, how they are going to use this 5G as technology? If you kindly look at here, the last few years, the penetration of deep technologies into startup ecosystem is almost at 18%, which is considered very significant compared to any other startup ecosystems where startups are relying on deep technologies to make something new innovation in the product as well as services category. This in a nutshell brings in about what kind of use cases by using these deep technologies are available with existing, I should say, resources in terms of technologies. AI plus IoT, it says a few of them like quick insights from data, unplanned downtime, increasing operating efficiency, smart assistant. This is the kind of thing what they're looking at AI or IoT solutions. Of course, we are having similar key solutions using blockchain and AI, and similarly even AI, IoT and drones, and as well as 3D printing. So these technologies, which they say a basket or bouquet of technologies they are looking at, what is this 5G is going to make difference to us? Here I acknowledge the point from the chairman as well as from Randeep, who specifically mentioned that use case labs are what are the use cases we are going to build from Indian ecosystem to make and as well as to make use of the 5G as a service as well as the usage, and also how Indian innovation can address development challenges as well as create new innovations for domestic as well as international market. So if you look at here, this is very succinctly summarizes how this, these new technologies driven by these startups and SME ecosystem are going to address especially the development challenges, which I feel very pertinent for India in a way considering our diversity, population, as well as opportunities as well as challenges. We have got a huge scope how we can make use of technology in addressing some of the issues. When you look at some of the startups who are working on, they're looking at health sector, which is very, very critical. We have seen for the last few months a kind of innovation. I remember one of the startup was sharing about how they used the X-rays using AI, a kind of mechanism to diagnose for COVID in the case of pneumonia cases as well as the other categories. Similarly, agricultural sector, more than 50% of the Indian employment is in agri sector. Rest 40 comes to around SMEs and MSMEs, which include even the informal sector. And we can also see similarly this, air and water resources, which are very critical, even in terms of achieving the sustainable development goals, energy, education sector, as well as sanitation. What I want to stress the point here is, when we speak about 5G, the demand is going to be generated from these particular sectors in building new usage cases, where there is a need to bring a kind of collaboration among the stakeholders. I'm trying to go to the next slide. Yes. So, having spoken about startup ecosystem, which is working on technologies, I also want to share and give you a glimpse about what are the Indian companies have been doing, especially in the telecommunication hardware as well as different solutions. I really appreciate Nokia's initiative where they have opened their test bed in Bangalore as well as Gurgaon for the startups and SMEs to come and do the experimentation and as well as develop the solutions. And I had the opportunity to visit even their innovation lab, where a lot of solutions they demonstrated, including smart ambulance, smart traffic, as well as platooning of services using 5G kind of services. But here the current slide shows the kind of work is happening in the country, starting from, you can look at LTE and convergence chipsets. I mean to say, even the chipsets, there are some small companies who are working at, I should say that chipsets of 4G, where they have already tested for voice and data, especially to partner and complement the efforts from OEMs as well as MNCs, and going all the way up to the core network in box, those kind of solutions. This indicates the potential collaboration, what is possible from all the stakeholders, starting from Indian companies in software applications, mobile applications, including hardware applications, how they can work together, which I want to summarize in this one last slide, where now we are having a kind of building blocks. There are building blocks, which are in terms of standards. We are having pillars of the country like TEC, which is already working very strongly in the standardization. We have got test bed where Department of Telecom has invested almost like 224 crores, a consortium test bed, which is going to be a public access open test bed where anybody can come and test, starting from algorithm to subsystems, even including a kind of small component level. And similarly, we have got policy and spectrum efforts that are happening from terms of the 5G high-level forum, which had 7 task forces, which you already heard and which most of you know, which is a public domain document where you can look at what kind of recommendations they have been given. I can say that some of them are already implemented, but many of them are actively in progress. And of course, capacity building, which is an important one, like Broadband India Forum, which is an industry think tank, as well as we have got DOT institutions, NTA, PRIT, as well as NICF, which along with partnership with industry, they are already doing certain capacity building programs. But I want to come to the central issue of how industry can urgently bring in collaboration. I see there is a significant gap when I look at the kind of potential opportunity existing as islands of excellence. Work is happening in independently, but we are unable to take leverage of collaboration among all of us. I mentioned something here. A few weeks back, we had some discussion with the Ministry of Electronics and IT, where they have got, it seems, over 70 centers of excellence, where there is already an established infrastructure about IoTs as well as others working in different sectors, including automobile, health, fintech, etc. So we are looking to explore the opportunity to bring in core infrastructure of testbed as well as standards making, which are relevant for the country as well as global, where we want to ensure that there's interoperability is assured, and as well as policy and spectrum issues to make the reasonable and required spectrum available in necessary bands, taking note of the global device ecosystem development, build capacities. Ultimate objective is that to create demand by creating more and more usage case labs, having significant work happening on in 3GPP, especially SAT, where we see Bosch, Siemens, who are already leading with Industry 4.0 and other kind of solutions. India working very significantly on the usage case labs is very critical with all your support, and we count on your support, and we are working from DOT as well as TEC and other institutions, how we can build that kind of a kind of bond as well as collaboration. And thanks very much for the Broadband India Forum for giving this opportunity. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Babu, for giving the government's perspective on the whole issue of 5G and all the related deep technologies associated with it. And it's a good news that Nokia has been sharing its testbed in Bangalore and Gurgaon with the startups. So I should have heard that from Mr. Randeep Rana. All right. So last but not the least, we have a very eminent panelist, Mr. Alain Duran, who is principal technologist at ICANN. And Mr. Alain joined ICANN as a staff member in March of 2015 and currently serves as principal technologist. Alain's responsibilities include applying expert technical knowledge and experience to improve ICANN's technical capabilities and stature. So I welcome Mr. Alain to kindly make his presentation.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me today and allowing me to share some thoughts on 5G and ICANN and the DNS, which is the main part that ICANN really help to coordinate. I apologize for the lack of video. I live in a small village where the bandwidth is not enough to have at the same time a good audio and video. So given the choice, I rather like you to hear my voice rather than to see my face, because I'm not in an office, I'm just in an apartment right now. So I will just continue with only voice. And I will share a couple of slides. Those are not pretty slides. but they're more technical, and I'll try to dive in a little bit. Let me start the sharing. Okay. All right. And please let me know if you see my slides properly.
Yeah, we can see. We can see. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. So, as an introduction, the internet is getting more and more mobile, and one of the previous speakers talked about the first G for machines, and that's really what this is about. This is not just about computers to computers or smartphone or people with an actual human behind them. It's about really machine-to-machine communication. And the question really is the current model which we have on the internet, what we call the TCP/IP protocol suite, is still relevant in this world. And when we instantiate that in an ICANN world, as I mentioned, DNS is really the core. What we're doing is this DNS still an operable solution in the DNS world, considering a lot of the latency sensitive applications that have been discussed, like touch networks and car-to-car communication, they still work. And there's still an interest in the unique set of identifiers that I can help to coordinate. Or should we have some other identifiers in the 5G environment? So in the next few minutes, those are the few topics that I'm going to address. Okay. There you go. Yes. So first point is about latency. I've heard many claims, and I've seen a number of printed articles doing the same thing, that DNS is not compatible with 5G low latency requirements. So I'd like to analyze this a little bit. When you have a communication, the 5G radio link is just the first leg of any communication. And then your communication will go most probably over fiber to some kind of a data center, and maybe like today in this communication, it will have to go from country to country, maybe continent to continent. So let's assume a data center that's only located 1,000 kilometers away and connecting this over fiber. So this 1,000 kilometers at light speed, if you take into account the speed of light in glass, which is not the same as speed of light in a vacuum. So this 1,000 kilometers is 10 millisecond round trip time. So if your DNS server is on the other side, this is the extra delay that you're going to encounter. So if you are doing this at the beginning of a communication, and then you have a long-lasting communication, this extra 10 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds even, if we add the 5G latency itself, this is negligible. So for any types of traditional communication that are long-lasting communication between different hosts across the internet, DNS will work just as it works today. There will be absolutely no problem. Now, there are potential issues when a device is not trying to connect to a machine that is in a data center far away, but trying to connect to something that is local. So in a machine-to-machine communication context, when let's say two cars in a mine, for example, are trying to communicate to each other, delay is a lot more important. This can be addressed. This is not problem in the architecture of a DNS. We have implementation deployment tools that we can use to solve this. And the answer is actually relatively simple, is put a DNS resolver close to those machines. So if you have those machines that have this very tight latency requirement, most probably they are in the same vicinity, they may be attached to the same edge. Well, it's actually possible to deploy a DNS caching resolver within that edge network, and that way you will have no extra latency to do your DNS resolution. So this is actually workable in that. It's really an engineering problem to how to position those DNS caches to make sure that the latency requirements are met. So there's some additional technical things. We can do prefetching. We can modify apps so that they do the query as soon as possible, go over for the DNS as soon as possible. And once we have done that, maybe start communication later. But overall, the point is This is a deployment issue. This is an operational issue, an engineering issue. This is not an architecture issue. And the DNS, as exists today, can keep working fine in a 5G environment. I would like to touch on another topic called network slicing. So network slicing is a virtualization technique that enables to build many networks with different characteristics, different QoS characteristics over a single cellular infrastructure. So essentially you create one infrastructure and then you operate multiple services on top of it. This is nothing really new. I mean, this whole idea of sharing infrastructure is already part of the previous generation of like 4G and some of us standard like VPNs. What is new here is to allow those essentially VPNs all the way to the handset. And the idea is that if you put aside some spectrum for specific customer that have dedicated needs, then those specific customers can bring extra revenues that will offset the cost of putting aside the spectrum. So that's an economic equation. Will it be true? Well, it hasn't been started yet, so we'll have to see. This is a technology that is still in the early stage of standardization. Now, when you do VPN between, let's say, employees of an enterprise and an enterprise data center, or a VPN between some machines and the data center is supposed to control them, it's not really a problem at all. It's technology that we understand. The question is, could this be deployed in a different model by very large platform providers? By very large platform providers, I'm talking about the 800-pound gorilla on the internet who manage all the content, search engines, social networks, and all of that. There's a possibility to deploy network slicing in a way to establish a direct pipe between a handset and one of those big platforms like Google or Facebook or something similar. So this will be a complete departure from the current internet architecture. Current internet architecture is we have one network, one global network, and then we run multiple applications over that network. If what scenario I just described were to happen, then we will have multiple networks. We will have one network per essentially large platform provider, plus maybe one network for the rest of the internet. Well, it doesn't take a lot of foresight to think that this rest of the internet network may or may not have the same quality as the premium networks, simply because most of the interest will be somewhere else. From an ICANN perspective, we believe that a model of a single internet based on the global system of unique identifier is the best way to maximize the benefits the internet can bring. If this network slicing technology were to be adopted by large platforms, there will be a risk of fracturing the internet. And we believe it is not the best direction for the future. Now, this is a little speculative, but it's actually possible. So we'll have to monitor and see if this is happening or not. Rapidly touching on new identifiers. Well, in 5G, you have voice over LTE, you have application like WhatsApp, Telegram. Many users, my family included, never dial a phone number anymore. All we do is use Telegram or WhatsApp and just push a button. So phone numbers may or may not be the most critical things. Things like E164 numbers are used in cellular networks to identify the devices, not so much the subscriber anymore. And packets are routed really with different types of identifier that users never see. Is there a need to bridge those different platforms like WhatsApp, Telegram? Well, not really, because those platforms do not interoperate. They compete with each other. So they don't see a unique identifier as they could exchange in between them as a feature. They could see it as a bug. So it's unlikely we will see something like this. Now, what about IoT devices? Well, Today, IoT devices use some kind of proprietary system to identify the actual physical device. Very often, this identifier is tied to the hardware. It's a MAC address or some kind of serial number. It works, but it creates concerns about privacy. If I see this identifier once and I see it again, I know this is the same device. I've been moving from one place to another. I can track the device. If I can track the device and the device belongs to a user, I can track the user. So there are a lot of privacy issues associated with that. So we have been looking at potentially having some privacy-aware identifiers that will be ephemeral. For example, you use a new identifier in the morning, in the evening, and tomorrow. Those three identifiers will not be the same, will not be linked to each other. So it will not be tracked. This is something that can be done within the DNS. Not that long ago at the NICAD meeting in Abu Dhabi, we made a demonstration of a technology based on DNS where we could use those identifiers. And the nice thing about them is we can set their persistency characteristic. We can make them ephemeral. They will only work for just maybe a few minutes, few hours, or long-lasting, that they will work almost forever. So this is an interesting area for research. Now, we hear a lot about non-IP solution at the edge of 5G networks. Recently, we heard about things like ETSI, NIN, or we heard about the technology pushed by Huawei called new IP. There's some other work that is done also by various groups to use some kind of a layer 2 technology or layer 2.5 or layer 3 technology to do something different. The starting point for many of those technologies is to say that, well, TCP/IP is 40-year-old, it's too old, we need something else. We observe that TCP/IP has been very nimble in the last several decades. Yes, it's 40-year-old, but every time it has adapted to new technology. For example, in the early 2000s, when NTT Docomo came with technology called iMode, and then other carriers in the world when took on something called WAP, it was felt that it's impossible to do web over a wireless network. Well, fast forward a couple of years later, we arrived to smartphones, and TCP/IP is everywhere on all the handsets. So it's important to not confuse an architecture problem with a limitation of the current technology, of the current CPUs, of the current bandwidth available. So far, we observe that this TCP/IP protocol suite has been quite successful, and it will take a really, really compelling reason to move away from it. So thank you very much. And we're happy to have any questions if there is time at the end of this panel.
Thank you very much, Alain. Wonderful presentation. And I think Mr. Rana may have some questions from you. Do I have to sum up, because it's a small gathering and everybody has understood what has been spoken? Perhaps we can chit-chat about some of the things that Alain was talking about. So I'll start with my own question. Alain, this ephemeral identifiers, they are used anyway in case of WhatsApp to WhatsApp calls, isn't it? And it has nothing to do with, it does not clash with your E.164 because anyway, it's an OTT, and the call that is on the OTT is not interoperable with any other application. So therefore, the whole addressing business remains with that application itself. So I think that issue is not such a major issue. And the other thing that you talked about, the delay due to DNS, in any case, the 5G talks about edge computing, therefore bringing the whole data set closer to the BTS, and we are trying to solve this problem in the 5G. So perhaps Mr. Randeep Rana could add further, or if he has a question, you can ask Alan.
Not really, sir. So I think maybe Alan can answer your question. So I have nothing more to add on that.
Okay.
Just talking about things like WhatsApp and Telegram, they don't really use the EU164 number for much, except to identify the user when they sign up. That's the only thing it's used for. And after that, you are absolutely correct. They use some proprietary identifier to connect and route the calls. So because they do not interoperate between WhatsApp and Telegram and a few others, there is no need for a global system of identifiers.
The other thing is that you talked about TCP/IP header compression. We have used in satellite communication for a very, very long time. It's a very simple technology. You compress the header at the transmitted, and at the receiving end, you just expand it, bring it back to the original IP header, and put it forward. So I don't think that this is going to be anything different when we deploy the 5G systems.
This is absolutely correct. And I've seen a number of studies actually that shows that if you deploy header compression on the handset, you actually save a little bit on the battery life on the handset, which is a good plus.
And then coming back to the IoT technologies, as far as the WLAN is concerned, they have got their own proprietary addressing system. And as you said, that it is hardwired in the device itself physically, and therefore there could be some privacy issue. Of course, Sigfox and LoRa both then claim there are no privacy issues, and the system is quite secure. But going to the 3GPP based technologies for IoT, it is E.164 addressing. And here in India, we have adopted a 13-digit identifier for the eSIMs and the physical SIMs also for the IoT. And I'm sure that it will work fine. There should not be any difficulty. And it will not interfere whatsoever way with the IPv6 addressing system.
So let me expand a little bit on this privacy issue. I know in the US and also now in France, and I'm sure in many other countries, I'm sure in India there's something similar. There are solutions to do routing when you're driving the car in the morning to go to your office or to go wherever you want, based on signals that come from other cars. So they receive the signals and the GPS coordinate of the different cars, and they can calculate the speed of those cars and compare this to the nominal speed of the road. So they see if the road is congested or not. This is a wonderful thing. But the system has to know you. It's based on the identifier for your car. So if you have the same identifier today, tomorrow, the day after, up to Friday, then we know it is you who is using your car every single day to go on the same road. There's some privacy issues about that. Let's say that one day you decide to not go to work, but go somewhere else. Somebody could actually see where you're going. Or like we do have a lockdown here in France that we just started a few days ago. Somebody could say, oh, you are actually driving, you should not, you should stay home, you know? So there are there's quite a number of privacy reasons why keeping the same identifier every day for things like that is a bit of a concern. The solution is actually not difficult. The solution is to say, all is really needed is to know that there is one car that is on this road this morning. Next day, it can be a different car. The correlation between today and tomorrow for the application is not important at all. So all I have to do is to create a new identifier tomorrow. And yes, you can track me for 20 minutes, but you cannot correlate what I will be doing today from what I will be doing tomorrow. So having the set of ephemeral identifier that you can change very often has good properties to protect privacy.
So, Alan, I think you left Paris and went to your village because of the lockdown in France. Okay. And when it comes to privacy, I will share my experience. Beginning of every month, I get a mail from Google, and it asks me should I show you the areas you travel. And believe me, earlier we used to have the foreign travels also. Every travel and every stay location is mapped by Google. You do whatever you want, and it shows it to you. So, I mean, we have to worry more about the security of our cars than individual security. Anyway, we have sold our individual security to Googles and Facebooks of the world. Any other question among ourselves? Anything that anyone wants to discuss? Or I hand over to Mr. T.V. Ramachandran.
Thank you, sir. Shashi, do we close the session now?
Yes, sir. We
So I
close the
have a
session.
pleasant duty then of thanking you all, particularly the chairman, Mr. Srivastava, Mr. Kishore Babu, Randeep, Alain, all of you for brilliant presentations. It's been fascinating and something which I could never imagine. And in fact, parts of what Alain said, I had never thought of those angles. And it's very illuminating. Randeep was, as usual, most colorful and brilliant. And Kishore Babu sir went in correctly from the other end, from the user end, from the startups, the manufacturing. So that was also very, very revealing and very informative. Thank you all for this great session.
Pleasure.
Thank you once again, Mr. Srivastava, for brilliantly steering this session and making it so enjoyable.
I just wanted to add one thing, sir, for the knowledge of Mr. UK Srivastava and Kishore Babuji. We had 676 attendees today, sir, in this 5G India event.
Oh, great.
So
Great.
this is the interest which has been created in this country. We have 600 and plus people, and at the moment we have around 276 people attending online in this time.
Wow.
I love you.
That too on
Thank you very
Karwa
much,
Chauth.
sir. Yeah,
That
that
one
was
festival.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is what. So we have that kind of an interest in for 5G, and I hope people like UK Srivastava and Kishore Babu and the policymakers will have 5G soon in India. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.